The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is supported by Cheerios. As part of a heart-healthy diet, the oats in Cheerios can help naturally lower cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.
Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, my hometown, out on the edge of the prairie. It's been hot out there, got up into the 90s, and then the other day got up to 97 degrees, which people whose heredity comes from Germany and from Norway are just not prepared for. These old Norwegians, these guys who go around in flannel shirts, and they've got the insulated ones for the winter, and then they've got the thin ones for the summertime, and 97 degrees, they just start to fade fast. They sit out in the shadows in the backyard and they put their bare feet into pails of cold water, and they just sort of gradually fade away, and they go off into a sort of a hypnotic state. Cold, you see, is a stimulant, and warm weather, hot weather, puts us into a hypnotic place where we're liable to do strange things. A man who has a perfectly good life and who has love and friends, maybe 2, maybe 3 friends, and who has skills, so he has some place in the world, his regular meals, and he's got a good place to lie down and sleep, but nonetheless gets up into the 90s, and this man sits out in his backyard out here, and the smell of the lilacs is all gone now, and the smell of romance, and all you have is the smell of hot asphalt and the smell of bug repellent that doesn't repel any bugs who grow up here. It only irritates them, and the smell of charcoal smoke, and suddenly he is dissatisfied with his life, and he thinks to himself, these people don't understand me. I have never been understood or appreciated one bit by these people. And before you know it, he has packed his shotgun and his fishing rod and reel and his bowling ball and a clean change of socks and underwear in the back seat of his car, and he has taken off for the territories. And he's headed off to Montana with no idea what he's going to do out there. Hot weather, heat does this. Mothers take their children down to the beach. Why do they do that? We don't know. They think they're from some other gene group somehow, but they go down to the beach. These people are supposed to stay away from the sun. They're supposed to wear broad-brimmed hats. They're supposed to not go out in the sun. We're not conditioned for this. They go down to the beach, and the sandwiches become hot and soggy, and the brownies melt inside the waxed paper, and the soda pop becomes lukewarm. And now the women who lie under the umbrellas and try to read a book, they're the ones who get into trouble, you see. The women who shed their modesty, and they take off their T-shirts and they take off their shorts and they run into the water in swimming suits that used to fit them before they had children. They're okay if they can dash in through the children and out into the water, and they cool off and sanity returns to them. But women who lie there on the sand under the umbrellas, and they're reading novels about people who have much more money than they do, and who are beautiful, and who are slender, and who have amazing romantic lives, they become dissatisfied lying out there in the heat, and they come back to their homes with their children, and when their beloved husband comes up from the basement all hungry and lonely like an old coyote, they look at him and they say 3 jagged things in about 30 seconds. They say, we're going to my sister's for dinner tonight. I told you about this 2 weeks ago, so I don't know why you're playing ignorant right now. And by the way, I think it's time that you put away those pants that you've been wearing, those mediums, and get out the extra large, because I had to sew up a couple of crotches of those pants. You can come back to them someday later, and here's a Kleenex. It's right up there, right there, and you're... Looks like it's been sitting there for a while. And she goes to bed with him. He falls asleep. He snores like a badger caught in barbed wire. And she comes down late at night, and she goes online, and she goes to a website called Married But Still Looking. And she meets up in a chat room with some old pals of hers, Big Boy from Montana and Built for Comfort from Alabama. These 2 gentlemen she's been online with for hours who have become her best friends. She can tell them things that she cannot tell to other people in the Lutheran Church. It's the heat. It's the heat. That's what it is. The high school band is out there practicing out on the football field in the heat in their woolen uniforms. They're marching up and down, practicing formations for the Chisholm Cheese Curds Band Festival and contest this coming weekend, marching up and down, and they're playing When the Saints Go Marching In, and they're forming the L and the W, and they're putting the little halo over the W, but it gets elongated, and the letters, and so that now they're spelling out the word owl, and they're playing the song slower and slower, and sweat is pouring down their bodies. These children are planning to escape from this town as soon as they possibly can and take on a vagabond life, knapsacks just bouncing from one job to another and from one partner to another until they wind up out in California, and they're switching, they're texting on their little telephones, and they're twittering little updates on their progress minute by minute as they're driving along, and they're scaling ahead on their iPods, and they're listening to music, and they're working the remote as they're driving along abandoned roads, along high cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where just one headlight on this old car and suicidal deer are waiting in ditches, waiting to leap out in front of them, their antlers poised. It's heat that does this. It's heat that drives people to this fate. People go out picking blueberries, and a beautiful season for blueberries. They go out with their pail, and you run into somebody you haven't seen since high school, and you're picking blueberries alongside him, and your forearms touch, and your legs touch, and suddenly things start to happen, and he puts a blueberry into your mouth, and his fingers linger there between your lips, and even though you know better, you invite him back to your house, and you're going to make a blueberry pie, and you get the flour rolled out, and the crust is all made, and then interesting things start to happen, and you're in each other's arms, your arms wrapped around each other. You're going up the stairs. You're saying, to heck with adult Bible study tomorrow morning. I'll just let other people take care of that. Let's live, let's love, let's laugh, be happy. It's heat that drives people to this. You wake up in the night, you hear whippoorwills crying to each other. 3 o'clock in the morning, you half hear them in your half sleep, and they sound like the voices of women that you've known all your life who are inviting you to come back, come back. And you roll over and you reach across the bed, and now you realize there are children in bed with you. There are 3 of them in bed. 1 is your own, and 2 are neighbor children. Where did they come from? And they have been scooched up right next to you, and so you've been sleeping on this narrow ledge on the edge of your bed, and that's why you had that dream about walking on the railing of the Empire State Building. And you get up and out of bed, and you go sleep on the couch for a while, and you lie there for a while, and the dog comes and licks your mouth, and you wake up. And that's why you had that dream about that woman in your sleep. You get up and you turn on the radio, and it's the Lutheran sermonette in the morning, the Lutheran whispers, and the text is from the Gospel of Mark, and Jesus is on the Sea of Galilee with his disciples, and the big storm comes up, and he calms the sea, and the message is that God will help us through all of our fears. But it's just a 5-minute sermon. And before you even start to come to believe in it, we come to the news now. And now Michael Jackson is dead. This amazing person of our time is dead. This man who had the same fears that all of us had, but who was afflicted with so much money that he was able to try to deal with them. And to deal with the fear of death, and the fear that we will live our lives without ever having lived, and the fear of boredom, and our own distaste for our own noses, these ugly things in the middle of our face. I've never cared for mine. Yours is very nice, but I've never ever cared for mine. We listen to this news and we go back to sleep. There was a big rainstorm the other night. It was a beautiful rainstorm. It came in early in the morning, thunder and lightning, and it poured buckets of rain. A lot of people can sleep right through a thunderstorm. They just wake up when it's all over. But when it is all over, they wake up with a sense that the world has now changed and the world has been blessed. And we live in this beautiful place, this gorgeous life. They arise after a great rainfall with a sense of peace and fulfillment at this lovely world that we live in, and the smell of hydrangeas out the front porch and a fish jumping up from the lake. We look out across the water and the sound of a distant boat and a green light blinking on somebody's front porch all the way across the water. And what does it tell us but of the endless possibilities of life? Thank you, God, for this good life, and forgive us if we don't love it enough. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average.
The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is supported by Cheerios. As part of a heart-healthy diet, the oats in Cheerios can help naturally lower cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.